Hey there, I'm Nancy from Mettle, and welcome to Mettle Live. Today's guest, we're pleased to introduce Jonathan Winbush, founder of Winbush Immersive.
Hey, how you guys doing out there?
Great, how are you doing, Jonathan?
Can't complain. It's been a busy week with NAB and everything.
Yeah, it's amazing that people just jumped in and were able to do the whole thing virtually. It's pretty
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
So
It
let
was
me
cool how we pulled it off.
So let me tell our guests a bit about you. So you've been working in Hollywood since 2006, doing motion
Yeah.
design for film and TV for big brands like Marvel, the Discovery Channel. But I would say the side of your work that I'm most familiar with is your immersive work. So you have a lot of award-winning, internationally recognized productions for Mixmaster Mike, for the Special Olympics, for Mark Christopher Lawrence, and My Little Pony. So
Yeah.
today's format that we're going to follow, we asked people for questions on what they want to know. And so we're going to go through three main topics. The future of virtual production, your virtual reality and augmented reality production pipeline, and we have a few questions about your YouTube channel.
Okay.
So we're going to get started with the first question, which is, what do you think is the future of virtual production?
So the future.
Sorry,
Okay.
so we have a clip loaded up that we're going to run to give people an idea of something that you just did this week.
Okay. Sounds good.
So we're showing the scene with Mixmaster Mike on the moon in front of what looks like a moon rover.
Yeah.
So
And so,
can you tell us what's going on here?
yeah, so recently I've been doing some experimenting with my iPad, using it as like a virtual camera within Unreal in real time. And so with Unreal Engine, we're able to take devices that have trackers in them, like the Vive tracker or your iOS device, and you could link those through Wi-Fi to your computer. And that way you can actually hold up like your iPad, and you can see through your iPad and use it as if you're, controlling the camera like you would be if you're actually on set.
Wow. So can you tell us about the other parts that you have set up? Like Mike, how did you get Mike in there in the scene?
So maybe a year or so ago, we hooked up with the guys over at Scan Truck, and they have a volumetric capture truck, which is like this huge truck with all these cameras in it. And so you stand, like you guys posted the picture of it when I was standing in the middle of it that
Yes.
had all those DSLRs around me. And so you stand in the middle of all these DSLRs. It takes maybe like hundreds of photos of you, and then somehow it merges all those photos together to come up with a photoreal accurate representation of that figure. And so we did a couple of takes of Mike, and then I was able to bring that into Cinema 4D to clean it up a little bit. And then I brought that into Unreal Engine just to have him as a character posed in there. Like if you wanted to, you could rig him up and everything and actually add movements like they do a lot of that in movies and stuff like that. But that part, yeah, that's how we did that part there.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, he's looking pretty realistic in this. So how big are the files that you get for this?
I had to condense that one down a lot. Like the raw probably came in at around 50 gigs, and I had to compress it down to, I think this one was around 2 gigs. I couldn't tell you how many polys. It was a crazy amount, but I had to keep compressing it down until it became manageable, because yeah, the raw files you couldn't even work with at all, but the raw files are like super detailed.
Okay, and you constructed this from actual pictures from NASA. So where do you get that? How do you access that part of this?
Yeah, so the environment was actually built out by Hue. Like NASA had posted, I believe they were 8K images from the Mars rover, and they were a 360 image. And so all you had to do is really stitch the sky together. Like I think the sky might have been like blown out white or something like that from the Mars pictures there. So Hugh knocked out the alpha channel on there. And then I actually came in and used, I built my own sky using Cinema 4D for the stars. And then I added like the nebula in there with Flux. So I brought Cinema 4D files into After Effects and then brought that into Unreal on the HDRI dome. and just constructed it all together. So like what I have here was just real quick and dirty. I maybe did that in like 45 minutes. So
Wow.
like if I actually finessed it, it would look a lot better and more realistic.
Yeah, but that's pretty impressive that in 45 minutes you can do a setup like this. So I think a lot of people are familiar with the Mandalorian setup that Disney's
Yeah.
doing. So how, obviously that's a super expensive and complex setup that they're doing, but as a smaller producer, how can you kind of mimic that in your own production pipeline?
Yeah, so for The Mandalorian, of course, they were using LED walls in the backdrop, and so the LED walls were hooked up to the Vive trackers that were hooked up to cameras, and they were able to control the LED walls using Unreal Engine. So everything in The Mandalorian kind of built the same way, like how I did this. You build out your virtual set, and then as they're moving the camera around the character, the background is actually parallax with that character because it's all moving in real time. And
Right.
so, of course, we can't afford those luxuries here. Like, you could do the Vive tracking and all that stuff, but a workaround would be inside of Unreal Engine, there's something called Composite Brush now, and you could use a green screen to knock out the green screen in real time, and then you can also do the tracking and everything on your camera. So, like, I'm working on a rig right now. Amazon is kind of backed up, so I don't have my parts yet, but I ordered like a bunch of mounts and clamps that I'm going to hook my iPad up to my Blackmagic camera and start trying to run some tests like that with the green screen, trying to mimic, the Mandalorian style a little bit as best I could.
Of course, if you're using green screen, I mean, in Mandalorian, they're lighting, aren't they, with that LED screen? So all the lighting
Yeah.
on your actors is it looks in camera as it
Yeah.
will, like usually in post once it's all done. So how do you work around that using green screen?
To the best of your ability, you can try to you might try to mimic the lighting with your actual physical lights that you have in your environment. Like you were saying with the Mandalorian, everything's being lit in real time by the background, but also in the foreground. Like because the LED walls are only behind you, they're not in front of you, so they still had to use regular production lighting to
Okay.
try to mimic that as best they can. So it would be the same setup if you're using a green screen. You would try, like if you're in a desert environment, maybe you could use like a brownish or a reddish gel on your light to try to mimic that type of light reflection that you would get out of there.
Okay, so a lot of our viewers use Adobe software, and it's a fantastic host software with a great creative community. So how, like, what would someone have to know ideally? Like now is a good time to plan for when productions ramp up again, long
Right.
term. So what would you recommend that someone learns in each of those key softwares?
So for like Unreal and Cinema, stuff of that
Right,
nature,
right,
or
right.
yeah. So like you were mentioning before, I've been doing a lot of tutorials up on YouTube, kind of like just merging all these platforms together because my background is motion graphics. So I use After Effects basically in every single project, and so I actually done a couple of tutorials, especially with your guys' stuff over at Mettle, how you can like use After Effects to build out your HDR scenes and then bring that into Unreal, so you're able to get that lighting and everything and build out your own virtual environments in there. But the I guess the hardest part for people sometimes is when they open up Unreal is just that interface there. And so it's just like when you're first learning After Effects, that interface is kind of intimidating, but the more you use it, the more muscle memory starts to build up and it becomes like a second language to you. So I would say if you're already proficient in your Adobe suite, I mean, it's just another platform to learn. You just have to get those reps in there and keep using it. But yeah, I would just say keep experimenting. That's the thing. Like right now, this stuff is new. It's kind of still the Wild West, and so it's just a whole bunch of experimentation that you're doing right now.
Well, it's also an amazing opportunity for
Yeah.
creators right now. So we have a question from Chris. Hey there, happy welcome, Chris. Uh, he wants to know why Unreal over Unity. Why did you choose that software specifically?
Well, when I first started working in real-time rendering, just kind of experimenting, I actually did use Unity. Maybe that was 2 or 3 years ago. I actually did like their online Unity course that you could pay for. And I mean, Unity is a good platform, but I kept finding myself being hit by limitations. Like every time I wanted to do something, it seemed like I had to go to the marketplace to buy like a plugin to be able to do the type of stuff that I wanted to do. Because when I work in software, I'm just continuously experimenting. Like that's my thing. I like to go in and kind of tinker, but it seemed like I kept hitting these walls. And so I think it was SIGGRAPH last year that I was at in LA. Unreal was just like all over the place. Like every booth had Unreal plastered, and they were all using it for, video games and movie productions and television. And then at that time, they actually announced that they were integrating with Cinema 4D with the Datasmith plugin. And so as soon as I went home, I downloaded Unreal. I tried it out, and I instantly fell in love. Like I felt more natural in their interface. And it's like everything I was throwing at it, it was actually able to handle. And so I just kept pushing myself more and more in Unreal. So it was more just of, it just felt more familiar for me. But I know a lot of Unity artists that swear by it. So, I mean, it's more on personal preference on, what software is right for you.
So we have a comment on screen right now from Maury. He's telling you great job on your C4D live presentation. Shout out to Maury. And
Yeah,
we also would like to give a shout out to AMD. Jonathan, maybe you could tell us what we're giving away today?
Yeah, actually, give me 1 second. I got the box back. Yeah, sorry, wasn't prepared this morning. I was up till 2 a.m. getting that tutorial up for virtual production. So, but this is what we're giving away right here. It's a Radeon Pro W5700.
Cool.
And so you just have to go to our social media sites, subscribe to Mettle, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I will enter you in a chance to win this card here. I guess we can, we'll do that sometime today, yeah?
Yeah, well, right now on screen we have an image with those links on them, so people can just go right over there and subscribe. Jonathan's awesome. So as well as being an awesome creator, Jonathan is also a good friend, and I find you're very generous to the creative community, Jonathan, with all your tutorials. And thank you again for sharing just what you're up to, because I find it's really helpful to the community.
Yeah, no problem.
So we're going to go to our second question. And that is from Andrew. What softwares do you use for virtual and augmented reality?
Okay, so for virtual reality, I was using a lot of, funny enough, a lot of Adobe After Effects, especially with the Mettle software. I first started when you guys had the Skybox. And so I haven't done a lot of room scale stuff. Most of the stuff I was doing was 360 VR. So that entailed a lot of Cinema 4D and a lot of After Effects, but more After Effects just because of the stuff that I was doing. Like I would build out my virtual sets in Cinema and then actually render those out as a 360 sphere and bring those into After Effects with the Skybox suite and start doing all my compositing and everything in there. So those were the main two. Yeah, I haven't done much VR with Unreal yet besides just some experimenting and stuff like that, but I would say After Effects and Cinema are the main two products that I use.
So we have a small clip from the Moonbase invasion that I'd like to play.
Okay.
And then we'll jump back into our discussion after.
Cool.
Okay, so what our viewers just saw is it's a flattened version because unfortunately this broadcast is not in VR, but that maybe that's coming. We'll figure that one out. So what did you do? Because we see Mixmaster Mike, he's at his turntable. Let's start at the beginning of the story. How did you get him on board for something like this? He's an amazing talent. He's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, he's a legend. So he's obviously a creative artist who was interested in exploring a new medium. How did you get in touch with him and move forward on this?
Yeah, I guess to make a long story short, like I was experimenting back in the day with the Oculus DK2 when that was out, and I had a friend, Tony Washington, that was actually doing illustrations for Mixmaster Mike's album covers. Okay. And so Tony told Mike about what I was doing, and Mike reached out to Tony and was like, tell him put something together. Even though we never had met before, he was like, I saw his stuff online. I trust his. I guess there was just kind of like that creative bond there, and so I put something together. And Mike set up a green screen shoot without even knowing what he was getting into. And so I actually showed him the first project was the magma chamber, and I showed him a beta or a prototype of it during the green screen shoot. And once he saw it, he was hooked on board, and we did the shoot, and then I composited him in there. And then we released the magma chamber actually at Comic-Con, and we released it at Tony's booth. And we actually got in trouble by the fire marshal several times because we just had a line going all the way down Artist Alley for everybody wanting to check it out, because we always knew at the time, and we just had like a crazy response. So I think Mike saw that response, and he's just been hooked in like augmented reality and VR ever since. So yeah, I mean, it all just kind of naturally came together at the right time.
Yeah, it's well, you won many awards. It got a lot of recognition, and I think with all your tutorials too, you've helped a lot of people understand the medium. So what was the biggest jump for you going from flat to a 360 or VR production?
Just trying to wrap your head around that, like whenever you're working in a traditional medium, like you always have the focus of the viewer because you have just this rectangle screen that they're always going to be looking at. But whenever you're working in 360, you always had to worry about what were they going to be looking at beside them or behind them, because when someone puts on a headset, the first thing they do is to start looking all around. And so the magma chamber was a big learning point because I was still working as if I was working in television. And so like all the focus was on what was in front of you. Like I still had stuff going on around you, but not enough to where people would want to, keep exploring because they were like laser focused. Like I was able to see like heat maps on where people are looking at, and like 90% of the time they were looking up front. And so with the moon-based invasion, I tried to add more stuff that was going on around you so that people would want to explore a little bit more and want to actually watch it more times so they can actually catch stuff that they missed. So that was the big learning curve right there, is making sure that you have enough action going on all around you to keep the viewer engaged.
So it seems like VR is getting a big push right now because people are staying at home and looking for more content. There seems to be like a merging of even video games, cinematic. Like last night, Travis Scott, I don't know if you saw it, he released his song in Fortnite. That was a big deal at our house because we have a 15-year-old son, so he was super excited about that. What do you think about that? So is that an area that interests you, to that merging of gaming, cinematic, and interactive?
Yeah. I actually wish I was a part of that. I just started talking with the guys at Epic. So I know they've been working on that for a while, but I caught that yesterday and I was blown away. Like I know they did one with Marshmello last year, but the Travis Scott one, I watched that yesterday and I was blown away. Like they went to like 50-fold, like with the amount of special effects and all the technical aspects that went into it. I mean, I would suggest everybody watch it. It's going to be playing for the next few days as well. But that's definitely a project. When I watched it yesterday, I was definitely jealous that I didn't get to be a little piece of that. Like, even if I just got to emit some particles or something small just to be a part of it. But yeah, I mean, stuff like that, like the crossover between, like all these different mediums is something that's going to be big moving forward. So I would like, people always ask me, like, what do they think is the future of our industry? And I think it's all these crossovers, like the different mediums are just finding ways to collaborate with the new technology and how to push this tech a lot forward. So like even 5 years ago, you would have never thought like you would have a live music concert inside of a video game with like millions of people being able to watch it all at once. I mean, that would have been unheard of or even unthinkable.
And it was amazing. It was really compelling content. Like it makes me want to play Fortnite, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, even if you don't like the music, you still have to appreciate the amount of, showmanship that went into it.
Yes, definitely. It was extremely entertaining and a fantastic performance by Travis Scott. Yeah. So we're going to do another quick plug for the AMD. We're giving away the Radeon, the Radeon Pro 5700. Subscribe, show the links to Jonathan's page. Sub to John Jonathan, for a chance to win that awesome prize from AMD. Thank you to the folks over at AMD. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our third question, which is how did you get involved in doing YouTube tutorials? But first, we're going to play your reel, which is your motion design reel. So can you let us know what we're going to see and what your part is exactly in the projects that we're presenting?
Yeah, so this is like my bread and butter is still doing motion graphics. So I work a lot in television. I do a couple of title sequences for movies. And so with this reel is Gapalov is basically, like, I couldn't fit everything into 2 minutes, but this is some of the stuff that I've worked on over the past decade. So you'll see stuff in there from Nike and My Little Pony, like some commercial work. So all the motion graphics stuff that's done in here is done by me. Like, I have my own company, but my company is basically just me here in my office. And so most of the work that comes in, like every now and then, like if it gets too heavy, I'll hire like a freelancer or two to kind of help do some stuff. But I would say like 98% of stuff in this reel is all stuff that I do on a day-to-day basis.
That's fantastic. Okay, so sit back, enjoy the ride. We're going to play Jonathan's reel. Thanks, Jonathan. That's pretty great.
Thank you.
So that is a good segue into our final question about how did you get started doing YouTube tutorials? That's a question from Amy.
Yeah, so it's funny actually. Like I said, I do a lot of tinkering and a lot of R&D. And so a couple of years ago, I was trying to teach myself X particles over holiday break, and a lot of stuff that I was accomplishing, like I came out with a good end result, but I couldn't go back and replicate what I was doing. And so what I would start doing was I would start using screen capture to capture myself when I was working. And I would always have, like, I always talk to friends through like Messenger and stuff. And like when we're learning software, we're usually pinging ideas off each other. And so when people ask me like, hey, how'd you do that? I would actually just start sending them like my screen grabs or my screen clips that I was recording of myself working. And I had a friend tell me, he's like, hey, man, you should just throw this stuff up on YouTube. And so I started to do that, but that was kind of boring. And so that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to rework my steps in this process. Like I went back, watched my screen capture, made it with commentary, kind of like a step-by-step, and uploaded that to YouTube. And I kind of got like a good response right off the bat. And so that's kind of where it grew from. Like I started uploading more and more stuff. And then I started to build like a little community, and people would actually give me comments like, hey, that's great, but if you did X, Y, and Z, you would get to your result a lot faster. So it started off as I started like pinging ideas off each other, and I was actually learning from the community, and I was given to the community. So it was just like a good back and forth, and out of nowhere, it just kind of became like its own thing. But I think before that, I did a tutorial for you guys for Skybox version 2 a couple of years ago. So I guess it started there, but I just never kept up with it. I should have started back then, but yeah.
Yeah, just if you're watching this stream, you probably know, but I'm a co-founder of Mettle, and we developed all the Skybox tools, which are now part of Adobe Immersive Tools. So if you're doing 360 editing in Adobe, you're probably familiar with what we've developed. And yeah, Jonathan, I'd say that's probably where we got to know each other initially with your work using the Skybox plugins. But I've heard it say that if you really want to learn something, you have to teach someone. Because once you know how to teach it, then it's really acquired knowledge. Would you say that you've noticed a difference since you started doing the tutorials? And I mean, in essence, that's what you're saying, but...
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that was a big part of my whole journey into Unreal, because whenever they announced the merger with Cinema and Unreal, I put together there was no like documentation on how to do it. Like they just announced it, but everybody's like, how in the heck do you do this? So I saw it as an opportunity to figure it out. And once I figured it out, I put the steps up online, and it kind of just blew up from there. And I saw like a huge interest in Unreal, in Cinema 4D and After Effects artists all wanting to get into Unreal. And so it kept like, the more I would dive into it, answering people's questions, the more I actually learned more about the software, because people were like, oh, that's cool, you did that, how do you do this? And so I would go and try to figure it out. And then it's like, as people are asking me questions, I'm starting to learn more and more and more until I became like really proficient at it.
I just want to say hi to David. He's giving you 3...
What's up, David?
Thanks for watching, Dave. So we're going to put links in the comments below to your channel for tutorials, definitely, so people can check them out. You can tell I'm Canadian. About my accent slipped in there. One of your recent tutorials that you did was going over like the 5 essential softwares. Just in general. I know we had spoken earlier in this screencast about virtual production and VR, AR, but just in general, just give a recap of the top software picks in general that you would recommend for anyone who is working in motion design. And just as yourself, like someone working on their own that needs to have a comprehensive knowledge base.
Yeah, so I would say for anybody wanting to get into motion graphics, I mean, the number one pick definitely is Adobe After Effects. Like ever since, even when I was in art school, I mean, I've been using it maybe since around 2003. And I don't think there's been a day where I haven't launched Adobe After Effects ever since then. So it definitely became an essential part of my career, whether it's for creating 2D motion graphics or compositing the 3D graphics that I make in Cinema 4D. So if you're getting started, I would say start at After Effects. And then once you become more comfortable in After Effects, then you want to throw in some 3D, which you could use some of you guys' plugins, like the stuff over at Mettle is a good start. But then you also want to try to get into something like maybe Cinema 4D or even Blender if you don't want to put the money up. Blender, I heard, is great. I haven't used it yet, but I know it's free. So you can't be free if you want to try to just jump in and get your 3D chops and then move up to Cinema 4D. But I would say for me, Cinema and After Effects are essential. And then the other stuff that I'm using, like I keep bringing up Unreal, but Unreal has real-time rendering. So it's like you can build your stuff in Cinema, bring it into Unreal, render instantly, and then bring that into After Effects to finish out your post effects and everything of that nature.
Great advice. All right, so we're actually getting to the end of our live stream. So I just want to say thank you, Jonathan. And we're going to do one last quick plug for the AMD Radeon. So go ahead and sub to Jonathan's channels for a chance to win the Radeon Pro 5700. And I want to say thank you very much, Jonathan, for joining me today. It's been a real pleasure. It's amazing. Even though you're far away, it's like you're right next to me.
Yeah. I
Thanks.
want to tell everybody, like, go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. And then I put up a new tutorial this morning on virtual production, literally like 3 hours ago. So leave a comment in there and tell me that you watched this stream there, and then that will give me an indication of who watched this stream, so that I can enter you in the raffle for winning the Radeon card.
Okay, great. Sounds awesome. Thanks so much, Jonathan. Heartfelt thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you, guys. Be
Bye-bye.
safe.
Bye.
Yep.